Women who are incredibly unhappy at home may make it their mission to lash out at other women who have what they wish they would have. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. One of the things that I have noticed, there's been a lot of clips of a particular show circulating around where there's a woman who's blatantly talking about like how her husband isn't working and she's pretty much over the marriage, over him, but at the same time they're still being intimate and doing all the things and putting on a good show, as she calls it. This very same woman will lash out at other women on the show and antagonize them and undermine their marriage. And she's kind of doing like this research and things like that that's being petty when that's, she could make a better use of her time. But this is something that I have noticed, over the course of my career and in friendships and other things like that. Is like when you're happy, if you are a happy woman and you are doing good in your life, women who aren't doing so well in their life will make it a point to pick apart, antagonize, backhand compliment, sneak diss, do all of these things to undermine you. And this also happens quite a bit in the workplace as well. I back when I worked in corrections, you know, being a black person that works anywhere, I feel like you're hyper aware. You're hyper aware of dynamics with people, and you're hyper aware of when the atmosphere changes, in particular towards you. This term is the pet to threat phenomenon. Like you could just feel it, where it's like you're doing well, you're talking with your supervisor, and then your supervisor comes in one day and you're like public enemy number one. What I have noticed with supervisors who tend to engage in the pet to threat phenomenon is they usually have a terrible life at home. Usually they don't have any power at home, or they're being disrespected or cheated on or lied to by their spouse. A lot of them, especially, my Caucasian counterparts, a lot of them are being disrespected by their children. And I'm not talking about like, a child skipping school. I'm talking about like children calling their mothers a bitch, hitting their mothers and things like that. And that's why I don't hang out too much with coworkers after work, because sometimes with people, they tend to talk a lot, and things happen, and I just come to work to do my job, not fraternize or make friends and do that. But I've noticed that when things are especially hostile at home, or they have no power at home, they will immediately try to come to work and oppress. It almost always, you could see it, whether it's men or it's women. You like, for me, doing the work that I've been doing for a long time, you can clock it to a T. And I'm sure there's others of you out there. And I'm going to say this unapologetically. So if you get offended, please feel free to unfollow and stop watching Dr. Jones, because I'm speaking about real world stuff that I know and that I've experienced. If you haven't experienced or you can't relate, move on. This dynamic, this dynamic of, a woman being bitter or unhappy and trying to undercut, undermine, sabotage another woman. This also happens within families as well. I've seen it with sisters, mothers and things like that. I've seen all sorts of low blows, and these are the types of women that will try to, go out and sleep with your husband or your boyfriend or something like that when you guys have broken up, or triangulate or insert themselves and create problems where there are none, or try to plant seeds of doubt and frustration. So you want to be careful about that, and be careful about how much of yourself you expose to just in general, but definitely in terms of your relationships or the things that are closest to you. Because what I'm noticing, or what I have noticed over the years, is that these things can be weaponized against you, even in the workplace, even at home, even amongst your closest friends. Their dynamic changes, or their life circumstances change. Suddenly you can find yourself in a hostile situation, a hostile relationship, a hostile work environment, where you become public enemy number one, and everything in your life, even though it's doing well, you look good, you smell good, you're doing a great job, but everything comes up for scrutiny, attack, and investigation, and picking apart, fodder, gossip, all of the good things, right? So, but this is something that happens on the regular. The moment that you can't relate, or the moment that you see that someone's life is sort of going in a different trajectory, and they start making comments like, I wish I had your life, or you just don't have any problems, or something to the like, you need to clock it for what it is, and move accordingly, or you will be sorry. You can, try and have a conversation with that person, but again, when people continue to like spiral downward and circle the drain, and they don't really see a way out, or they don't want to see a way out, because that's something too, right, where people can be stuck in like perpetual victimhood. You need to see it for what it is, and you need to step off that roller coaster, because you don't have to ride that ride with everybody all the time. You can just draw back your energy and just, give that person space. And if it's your job and this thing is happening, a job can become very contentious. You spend more hours at your job than you do anywhere else. If you work like me, I was working 50, 60 hours some weeks. So I was spending more time at my job than I was actually seeing, people I got at home, or, whatever I've got going on outside, right? And so your job is going to have a bigger impact on your mental health than most other relationships will, with the exception of like your spouse or your immediate family. But if anytime I've ever clocked that energy, and that hostility comes, and then you start to have those comments, and then those silly little actions that really start to jeopardize your job, or make you feel like, I don't want to come to work because so and so is going to be doing this or that, I get up, I say, it's time for me to move around and get on up out of here. And so I would encourage you to maybe think about doing that if you're able to. But I'm curious to hear, everyone else's experiences with women who are unhappy, and them, unhappy women who have undermined you or tried to sabotage you in some way. I'm curious to hear what your experiences are. And I hope that this helps. And let me know what you guys think. Oh, and also, if you want to keep in touch with me, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter, linked in bio. And my podcast is also linked in bio, and also across all platforms. Thanks so much.